Bayern Munich is the key word for our next topic. Desire Doue, which I just learned Doué means the gifted one. That is, I guess, why everyone is after this kid. He's the latest hot prospect out of Stade Rennes. That is where that's where Europe goes to shop if they want to pick up a gifted attacking midfielder or striker. Such an interesting player. Not, his again. Stade Rennes. If you play there, you obviously going to get on everyone's radar very quickly. Part of me is surprised maybe that Bayern Munich are going yet after another winger. Part of me also thinks it's only consequential given what we've seen from their wingers last season, essentially, especially with Leroy Sané and Serge Gnabry picking up several injuries. And Sané, of course, struggled his way through the Euros, right? Never looked 100% fit. And is on a very big salary. The same can be said about Kingsley Coman, who's on a big salary, and Serge Gnabry too, of course, is on a big salary. We hear so much about that's coming out of the Bayern Munich camp, and as they are rebuilding and restructuring and making this roster younger, how much they want to shed salary in order to go forward, right? And although this is an expensive player, 60 million euros is no small cash, as in particular when you consider that Bayern Munich have already spent in the region of 150 million euros this summer, right? But you kind of see the plan here a little bit with this guy, Stefan. I feel that this is maybe another piece in the puzzle of Max Eberl and Christoph Freund trying to restructure a team that is probably just too old and just needs fresh blood and needs some players whisked out sooner rather than later, and just add pieces that can instantly make this team better, or at least, in the short term make this team better. And if you can get Doué, and that's by no means a given, considering who your competition is, that is going to be, I think, a really big and significant piece of what is a significant rebuild.
Yeah, he's an immensely talented young player. Obviously it would be a huge signing for Bayern if they are able to kind of pick him up. They've been linked with a lot of players, it must be said, at this point. A lot of kind of big profile players. Xabi Simons is one who still seems to be kind of lingering as well. There's quite a lot of talk as to what's going to happen there. And I think the interesting, and it is an interesting kind of thought exercise to kind of figure out how he fits into this team. On paper, he's a left winger, and on paper, Bayern have, I'm looking at a squad in front of me. I can count at least 5 players in the senior squad right now who are first-team players. Some of them are obviously young players, but we're still talking about guys like Kingsley Coman, Matthias Tell, Brian Zaragoza. Remember him? He still hasn't really had a shot, and that's without even considering guys like without even really considering guys like Serge Gnabry and Leroy Sané, who can obviously play in those positions too. But I think the interesting thing about him is that Doué can really play across the entire pitch. If you kind of look at his game time at Ron, he's played, I think in a total of 76 senior games, 15 starts on the left, 10 starts, 18 starts through the middle, 6 on the right, a few as a kind of false 9. So, he really can play across the pitch. And what really stands out to me in terms of what he's really fantastic at is just an exceptional dribbler of the ball, exceptional close control, exceptional technique. And, not entirely different from, the young man that Stuttgart just signed that we talked about a minute ago. They're a very kind of capable player of playing across the pitch, which might really be necessary for Bayern next season or this coming season if we do expect him to move on guys like Kingsley Coman, potentially Serge Gnabry as well. It may just be in Vincent Kompany's preference to have players who can play a number of positions. And it's also worth pointing out that our colleague Ewan Robertson actually did a really good profile on the guy for Transfermarkt. And he actually spoke to our French team, and I can actually just read out some of the quotes that they said, which might intrigue some Bayern fans. I would really implore you to go to read it. You can find it if you just go to Desiree Doue's profile page on Transfermarkt and go to the news tab. It should be in there. But Ronan Karoff, who's one of our French football experts, said, in Ron, Desire is regarded as one of the best prospects in the world, probably on a par with Ousmane Dembele and Eduardo Camavinga. He's creative, agile, and can play in various attacking positions. He goes on to talk about Jeremy Doku's 60 million moves set a precedent in Ron, and they're probably aiming for a higher fee than that. And it's worth noting that he has been heavily linked to Arsenal and Tottenham here in the UK. So, it remains to be seen how much Bayern may end up having to pay for him. But he actually strikes me as a perfect signing for Bayern if Serge Gnabry and Kingsley Coman move on, because those are two players who've obviously played a number of positions for Bayern over the years, and their ability to kind of fill in where necessary is part of why they've both been such great servants to the club. I mean, I know on their day they would have kind of their own preferred positions, and we had the whole fiasco with Serge Gnabry wanting to play as a striker and things like that. But Kingsley Coman in particular, I think he's such almost an underrated player because the way he's always been happy just to come on, play their wing, put a shift in, and just be Mr. Consistent for most of the time. And it'll be interesting to see if, for example, if Kompany does want to give more game time to Matthias Tell, does want to give more game time to Brian Zaragoza, maybe doesn't want to rush Michael Olise in because he's moving to a new country, playing a new league, certainly new standards at Bayern compared to Crystal Palace. If you have someone like Desire Doue who can play across both wings and even through the middle, perhaps, if the likes of Leroy Sané drop off, then it makes a huge difference in terms of the options that Bayern have. And as we know, that's something that Thomas Tuchel was constantly complaining about last season, with every right to do so. Yeah, it's justified to do so. So yeah, I'm sure he would have absolutely adored having guys like Michael Olise or Desire Doue in his team. So yeah, it looks like a really smart signing for a number of reasons.
And you mentioned the English interest. It looks like Bayern's biggest competitor for the signing is PSG. They made a bid today, which is 40 million plus 10 million add-ons. I think Bayern, from what I've been told, they're willing to go as high as 60. So, it really, I guess, depends on what PSG are going to do here. There's also, I think, some word that Doué prefers going to Munich over PSG. There seems to be some sort of anti-magnetic force for young French players wanting to join PSG. Stefan, because I don't know how they do it, but it just seems like whenever there's a young French player, they do everything in their power to not go there. And I guess the last example of a big young talent that they picked up was Kylian Mbappe, right? Who's now, of course, at Real Madrid. It's just such an oddity. And I guess if PSG do manage to get Doué, what does that mean for this other really talented attacking midfielder that they already have under contract, and Xavi Simons, and what his future is, which is something that at some point we will probably have to discuss when we get closer to his decision, which he said would be after the Euros, right? It's just such an weird place to compete with that club, because Bayern's plan B is the very player. If Doué doesn't work out, it seems like that Simmons might be the plan B here, or is it maybe even the plan A regardless. But yeah, I just find it really kind of fascinating the competing elements here between Bayern Munich and PSG right at the moment, fighting for this young French attacking player. And all it comes into the same time too, where Bayern Munich, and I'm planning to write on this as well because I think it's very fascinating, is trying to restructure the youth development significantly at the campus, right? They brought in new people to oversee the development of players there. They want to develop more players themselves because they simply cannot compete with the likes of the big Premier League clubs every summer. And that's, even though they are going towards spending a record amount of money on the transfer window as we speak, right? I think they're already nearing that. But it's a really interesting in all this context of what's going on at the club right now, because they're still being linked with all these really big name signings, and there is a really good chance that it will be Doué and someone else, right? Whether that's Simmons or maybe Olmo. And then we're talking about another 120 million euros paid for new players. So that would get, if I have it right in my head, that would be 170 million euros spent on new players by Bayern Munich this summer, which is an extraordinary amount of money.